What's up, everybody? Welcome to the relaunch of Dialogues and Dice. The show we're going to talk about all things D&D. This is not an actual play, but it is also different in the fact that it is not going to be a how we roll recap type show either. Everything we talk about is going to be generic, not specific to how we roll. So we're going to kind of try to have a little bit of fun with this, and the format is going to be as and when. We have a topic that we feel like we want to discuss. We have a time slot that we want to fill. That sort of thing. So, anyways, today you got me and you've got Shagget joining us as well.
Yeah, you got me. Stuck with me. Sorry.
Chances are that this will be the probably regular mix-up, but it'll get switched up from time to time. We've got options to bring in special guests, do interviews, talk to some of you guys on camera, all that kind of stuff. Today we are going to go over a few things. We're going to do in our Let's Talk section, we're going to talk about Session 0, what, when, why, and how, and why it's so important. And this kind of came up because we just had probably one of the greatest Session Zeros that I've ever had in my long tenure of D&D.
It was a lot of fun. Like, it was, I mean, we spent the entire time we would normally do a show, because we did it on a Monday when we would normally be live streaming an actual play. And yeah, it was, usually session zeros are weird, and we're going to talk about how they can be different based on who's coming to the table to play, how you're coming together. But we on How We Roll have been doing it for some time, so we've run the gamut of our types of session zeros, where, yeah, sometimes we come and we're just like, well, I'm playing this, you're playing that, okay, draw up our characters, roll up our stats, be done, see ya, bye. And that was not what happened this past Monday.
No, this was actually a Session 0 as opposed to a predetermined character roll-up session. That's what it's meant to be.
Right.
But so we're going to talk about that in Let's Talk. We're going to revisit something in Monster Mayhem, and we'll let you know what that topic's about. And then we're just going to open the floor and do a Q&A. So we're going to just kind of flow through it. But as I said, we've got other sections that we're going to go into. We're going to have DM tips at sometimes. We're going to have guests, things like that. Maybe do some interviews. We will just kind of go as we go. As I said, everything we talk about is going to be D&D generic, or maybe even RPG generic in some cases. So that's the thing. So we're going to move on to our first subject this evening.
Let's talk.
Alrighty, yeah, let's talk. So what are we going to talk about? Well, we are going to talk about, as we already said, Session 0. Why you should do it, what you should do in it, why it's important, all that kind of stuff. To kick it off, as you guys know, we're about to start playing Curse of Strahd. First time we've done a published adventure in how many years? 7?
7 going on 8.
7 going on 8 years, right. Not going to go into the reasons why, but we decided that we would like to give it a little How We Roll treatment and kind of play it. But Curse of Strahd did a lot of questionable subject matter and things like that, and we wanted to kind of make sure that we kind of addressed all of that and put together a proper Session 0. So, we're going to kind of come at it from both sides. So from a DM standpoint, what is Session 0? Session 0 is my opportunity to say to the players, here is the campaign idea I'm thinking of. Here are potentially some pitfalls. Here are some triggers. Here's why you may or may not want to run these sort of things. Are you okay with that? Do you like this concept? Is this something you think you can have fun with? In a nutshell, that's kind of where I come to the table. It's my opportunity to present my idea to the players and then see how they feel about it. And then Shagget, from the player's point of view, what is Session 0 to you?
I think a lot of people consider Session 0 from the player's perspective as rolling up their character, right? Creating their character and finalizing their choices, be it choices you make before you come to the Session 0, depending on the table you're coming to, or choices that you're encouraged to make at the table when you finally get to talk to the other players and see what they're feeling, what they want to do, what they don't want to play, and creating a party around it. Of course, there's more to it than that, but I think when most people in the D&D space and tabletop role-playing games come to think about Session Zero, that's the predominant thought, is this is where I'm going to roll up my stats if that we're doing, unless we're doing point buy, having the DM at your disposal to ask questions, like what the DM is coming to the table for, the reasons why, just to clarify rules, mechanics, things like that. But of course, Session Zero should and could be so much more than just that, which is kind of what we had with our Strahd Session Zero last month. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Earlier.
I mean, as I said, specifically with Strahd, there are a lot of things, there's a lot of questionable content. And let's be real, even though we're running a published module, it's not going to come across the same. It's getting the treatment. It's getting looked at. There are some things out of the gate that I find inherently wrong with the adventure that I'm working on to improve and make better. But more than that, there's a few things that are in that published adventure that are very, very questionable subject matter. And when you've got a group of players, a very diverse group of players, for me, it was a good opportunity, and I think Shagget will agree, I laid it on thick. I was like,
oh yeah,
there is a lot of bad stuff in this adventure. It touches on all of the following. If there is anything that I've just mentioned that might be uncomfortable for you to play, especially on camera, tell me now, I will rework it, I will take it out, and we won't deal with it. And there was a couple. Fortunately, most of the things that my players were like, yeah, I don't like that. I was like, that's cool because it's already gone. So, but it was important for them to kind of have an opportunity to know what they're getting into. I explained to them, this is going to be a very dark thematic adventure. There will be some moments of levity, but they will be fleeting. If at any point you start to get real down and you start to feel like you're not having fun and stuff, you need to have the opportunity to say, we need to take a break, we need to lighten it up. Also with the Curse of Strahd, there are some differences. Some character classes don't work the same in Barovia. Bear in mind that the concept is that your characters go through the mists into basically like a demi-plane of existence that is run by the dark powers, and magic works a little differently, especially spiritual magic. There's some changes, so it was important that the players knew, as they're deciding what characters they want to make, how those things are going to impact them. Because what I don't want, and again, this is one of the reasons you have a Session Zero, is to get to the table and then the first time the player does a thing, oh yeah, that doesn't work properly here, this happens. And they're like, well, wait, that's not what I signed up for, And you never want your party to feel, or your players to feel like you've ambushed them and you're gimping them after the fact.
I mean, so yeah, this was the first Session Zero we had on How We Roll where it's not a Gorbad written adventure. It's a pre-existing module campaign that then Gorbad's going to homebrew and fix up and tweak and make appropriate and work for our table. Past examples of our Session Zero actually was coming to the table saying, what kind of game do you want to play? And it gave me the opportunity to say, well, I don't want to be a damn pirate. Like, I don't want to be on the open seas for more than a couple episodes at a time. Because while a lot of players maybe would enjoy a piracy kind of campaign, it just wasn't the style for me. So in past Session Zeros that we had, it was really like, well, I want to do something with a little bit more fun and frivolity. I want to do something with a little bit more political intrigue, something epic. And that's why all our past campaigns in Arconis had different styles and genres attached to it. Some were more macabre, some were more high fantasy. This was the first one where Gorbad, before Session Zero, said, hey, I'm thinking about running Curse of Strahd. And then he gauged all the players, and we all were like, ooh, that sounds fun, let's do that. So we came to this Session Zero knowing the contents, as like the general content, but then he had to lay it on thick so we knew exactly what we were expecting, and then could give our objections or critiques or thoughts after the facts. So that was the start of how it was different, because our previous Session Zeros were different kind of content, different kind of approach, and that's important, because if we've been doing this for 7-8 years now, as we said. Imagine if I went to Roll20, joined a group, and then they did a Session Zero, and I was with a completely new DM, a completely new set of players. That Session Zero would be more about, well, how do we mesh together as a group of actual real life strangers who haven't played before? And maybe I like to role play, and other people just like to dungeon crawl and fight, and other people like, you got to kind of find that's what those Session Zeros, I feel like, should be about, is coming together and seeing what the expectations of each player is as well as the DM. Whereas us, I know Jane. I've been playing with her for 8 years, so I kind of know what she likes, what she doesn't like as player to player. It changes the dynamic a little bit and what you come to Session Zero wanting to achieve.
Yeah, it's also important at the Session Zero to kind of remember you are playing as part of a group. You're talking about your group dynamic and your group's fun, right? It's not just you as one player or you as the DM. I don't subscribe to that old school mentality, even though I kind of come from that old school mentality. I like to think I've been able to evolve throughout the years with what I do.
Right.
But that whole, okay, it's my world, here's the adventure you're running, and I'm not allowing this. You can't do this, you can't do that, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. Okay, now go.
Right.
Well, yeah. That's great, but if none of those things work for your players, case in point, when we did the campaign Beneath the Veil, which we set in the continent of Sidoria, we decided that because, and without getting too far into it, but because of some things that are happening in Sidoria, gunpowder or black powder is a thing there. It is an incredibly close guarded secret, but it meant that firearms were potentially a thing. And it was important that everybody knew this is potentially a thing. Either embrace it and you can kind of bring your character around it, which you did. You made like a sharpshooter type character, like a
eventually after my first character died.
Yeah. But, yeah. But again, you're basically, as the DM, saying, I'm potentially going to break a rule. It's a norm that there is no gunpowder. I'm kind of going to introduce it here. How do y'all feel about that? Is that okay? And then it's important to say, here's how it works. Here's the sort of damage that pistols do. Here is the downfalls. Here's the advantages. Yeah. So that people knew, well, that's cool. I like that idea. I want to embrace that. Or, okay, yeah, that's great, but that's not for me. But again, because you're doing something that is breaking the norm, having a Session Zero gives you the opportunity to lay that on the table. And if you've got an idea as a DM and your players say, yeah, but I don't know. Well, then you can go back to the drawing board and create something that they like, as opposed to getting 3 or 4 sessions in and then having a player come to you and say, hey, I'm just not feeling this.
Right.
And playing around a table is one thing. Doing it on a live show where we expect to do 20 plus episodes of a campaign is something else.
Right. Yeah, we're not going to just stop at episode 7 and be like, we're not feeling it. See ya. We're doing it.
We're going to finish.
We kind of want to see it through. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's right, Junk. And we also had the dirigibles, which were like a handful of floating hot air balloons, basically. So we kind of, altered that a little bit. But again, that was all part of laying it on the table for Session Zero. Now,
the other thing having to do with dirigibles and the guns is homebrew is an important topic that should be brought up in Session Zero.
Right.
What your table's doing differently with certain rules or mechanics that other tables might not. Making it kind of clear. In our Marks of Entry campaign, we had homebrews. But actually in our Session Zero, we were more nervous and focused about getting the show up and running. The 3 players were brand spanking new, so some of the mechanics were really like, what do we do? How does this work? So we didn't actually go over some homebrew, which actually led to some comments later on YouTube saying, well, how is Radovan still alive when he went to -10 and 3.5? It's like, well, we kind of take into account his con modifier, which is a homebrew.
Right.
And, from that, we're now better. We switched from 5th edition to 3.5, so sometimes we get our rules confused, but, we're only human, right? But it is nice to know that we do healing differently in 5th edition. Our rest mechanics or natural healing is different. And that is something that we had to have a Session 0 conversation about when we first went to 5th edition in that first campaign, whatever. Well,
coming from so many games of 3.5, when we did a 5th edition, we discussed how the natural healing is so different. Like in 3.5, you rest and you heal a few hit points.
Yeah, like your level or something.
I mean, it's not many. And then, of course, in 5e, you have the short rest and the long rest mechanic.
Right.
And everybody at our table pretty much was like, that just doesn't seem very gritty to us. That doesn't seem very realistic. We see a lot of potential problems where we can push a reset button too easily.
Yeah.
And for a show that really likes to try to build tension and have a gritty kind of life or death struggle type feel to it, so we modified those rules to where you still heal a bunch, but you don't heal as much. It's still not, if you're really beaten up, you're not basically having a quick kip and you're fine again. Which again, the way 5th edition was inherently built, but building it that way and adjusting it when you do homebrew, and this isn't a topic, we're not going to go down the homebrew rabbit hole, but as it's relevant to this, it's important in Session 0 to explain, here's how I think we can do what you want, here's the mechanical alterations, but bear in mind, when you change one thing, it has an impact on many things. It's not just on this. So, in 5th edition, it's kind of assumed you're going to be throwing, the way the challenge rating works is based around, if you've got a party of 4 and they're level 4, then they should be able to deal with 6 to 8 CR4 encounters, it's never an exact science, in a day. Very few DMs I know ever throw 6 to 8 combat encounters at a party in a given day. It's always been more 3, maybe 4 tops, sometimes less. So knowing this, not having as much healing, if I'm only going to throw 3 or 4 encounters at you, maybe the CRs might be a little higher, but that's because you're going to fight a lot less. But also, it's all balanced in with the healings. But again, that was all part of the whole, here's how this is going to work in Session 0. If you want a more gritty healing system, we can do it. Here's the mechanics that will support it. But we have to also do these things as well. So from a slightly different standpoint, how do you view? It's a question for you, Shagar. How different, and would you say it's more or less important for a Session 0 for a live broadcasted show versus a group of friends sitting around a physical table versus a virtual table?
I think it's actually quite a bit more important for a live show, because remember, guys, we are telling a story using Dungeons and Dragons, the mechanics, the rules, to make it a cohesive, containable story.
Right.
And we're putting on a show, so already we're split in different ways. I mean, we want to be entertaining. I mean, how much fun would you guys have if Gorbat didn't do any of the maps? And we were just all leaning back, eating Doritos and Cheetos, not really engaging. If it wasn't our turn, I'm on my phone all of a sudden on camera. That's not entertaining, right? You have to kind of have a presence about you when you're doing this. So Session 0 is all the more important because you want to nail down those elements that could detract from the live stream show that you're going to be putting on. So it's not, it moves the story along, it moves the momentum along. You're not stopped at things. You know, there's nothing worse than dead air, right? And there's nothing worse than us making Gorbad look over a bunch of rules mechanics on air while we're trying to get through an encounter that might call for it. You know, we want to be as rules light, yes, but as accurate in the moment, make sense, move on, don't question it. If we made a mistake or we missed something, deal with it afterwards and then try to course correct later on. Whereas if you're on the table, yeah, you can have a very slow night at the table, but still have a blast, but not be beholden to dozens of people who are watching you, who expect their time to not be wasted. And I think Session Zero really cuts through that. So it's very important. I think the most important is if you're going to stream D&D or tell a story using D&D, to have a Session Zero and to try to get as much done as you can with it.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to that point of making sure that you're all as best equipped to handle 20 plus episodes or more. Hell, we've done campaigns that have gone 50 episodes. You're going to spend that much time on camera. You've got to enjoy what you're doing, and I think, like you say, it's more important to have that Session Zero to solidify as much as you can those details up front, so that when you enter the game, everybody is super gung-ho and excited about the game that they're entering. Mm-hmm. The other thing, and I don't want to give you any spoilers, so the other thing that I want to say is, it also, because all the players are building their characters together, there's a sort of organic dynamic where they go, ooh, my character and your character could, or what about if, and oh, this would be great. And they bounce ideas backwards and forwards, and it helps them weave better backstories together, as opposed to 4 players coming to the table, plopping down character sheets, and playing the game. You know, the other thing with Session Zero, and why I like the concept of one, is it allows all the players to do exactly like what happened in our session. I don't want to play another caster.
Yeah.
I've done it to death. I want to play something more physical, something more melee. Or, I'm really feeling going this route this time. So by everybody putting that out in the open, nobody came to the table with a solid preconceived idea that they had already fallen in love with, and were going to be disappointed when nobody wants to be a healer, or everybody wants to be a caster, or and yeah, you can it's D&D. You can make adventures to work for anything. You can run an entire party of dwarven fighters and make it work. You can. But
and then let's be real, there are 15 to 20 classes someone can choose. So you're going to be playing something that someone else possibly just played, and you kind of want to make sure you're doing it differently. And that person is there at the table in Session Zero that you can ask questions of. Oh, what about this? How, if I did this, would it be different from your motivations? That kind of stuff that doesn't always make it on air, on stream during the game.
Right.
You know, people have backstories and elements that just don't make it through the organic roleplay that's happening. And it would be nice, you can finally say, well, your character did this. Why did they do this? Oh, that's a motivation that I probably shouldn't have the same thing about with my same character.
Because we've just
same
seen
class. That. We just saw it, or there was a potential, you know, you want to differentiate, right?
Yeah,
so
it's like, you know, if you come off of a campaign where Jane has just played Kealiana, which is a classic fire-obsessed pyromaniac sorceress. The next person says, I want to play a sorceress. And I'm going to go the fire route. Okay, well, you do realize we just did that, right?
Right.
So, I want to play a sorceress. Okay, how are we going to make it different than what we just saw?
Yeah.
Oh, well, my sorceress is going to use this sort of ability, and she's going to act like this, or he's going to act like that, and this is his motivations, and he doesn't do... And you have those discussions, and it's, okay, yeah, this can work. Because the other thing is, we're trying to, in our Session Zero specifically, we're also trying to come up for something that we all think you guys will like. Not just for our entertainment. It's got to be something that, like, what can we give chat with this campaign?
Right.
what can we do for them? The other aspect of Session Zero that I think is, like you said, it's an opportunity for everybody to roll their characters together. If you're not using stat array or points by, right? Stat array is when you basically have 6 different numbers and you assign them where you want them. Which means everybody has the same stats, but they put them in the stats that matter to them. Then points by, of course, is when you have an allotted number of points and you spend those points, and higher level stats cost more points and lower level stats cost less points. And then you use those points. Again, everybody come to the table with the same number of points, but you've got to assign them differently. Because on how we roll, unless we're doing one-shots, we typically like to roll stats. For those that wonder, we use the 4d6, drop the lowest, and we do 2 sets. So everybody rolls 4d6 and counts the top 3, and they roll a set of 6, and then they roll a second set of 6, and they choose whichever set they think they can work best with. That means sometimes we have characters that are going to be, okay, this is a roleplay character. You don't have a lot of great abilities. Your enjoyment of this is going to come out of the RP. Right. Then on occasion, someone like Jane rolls up a Tolgar, which is an insanely powerful character with incredible roll stats. As a table choice, and as a group of players that think alike and have a level of, I don't want to say maturity, because it sounds like I'm saying anyone that doesn't view this as immature, but a like-mindedness, nobody gets salty because somebody rolled good stats and they didn't. That's not a thing at our table. Everybody rolls, you play what you've got. I think Shaggett's had a couple of the characters that we had that have had some of the worst stats.
Emblem Sin, the warlock I played, he had one good roll. Every other stat of his is middling, is like 9 to 12 in its value. Right. And I had one really good score, which I got to 20 charisma. And thankfully it's a warlock, so it works. But the rest of his stats are crap. Yeah. Are just not anything special.
That's it. So, we do that.
No.
But anytime the players roll their stats with, because on how we roll, we have a rule, and it is not because nobody trusts anybody, it is to make sure that nobody ever feels bad or like they might be suspected of fudging. So we always make sure that somebody witnesses the character rolls, whether it's me, a fellow player, somebody witnesses it. We roll them in Roll20, but the chat log is there anyway, right? So we could all see it regardless. But that way, when somebody does roll a character like Tolgar, everybody knows, holy shit, you legit rolled that. That's awesome. As opposed to, wow, you really rolled that? That's cool, I guess. And it's not so much that anyone would think that, but if you're the person that rolled it, I can only imagine bringing Tolgar to a game, putting it on the table and say, here's what I rolled up last night, and looking at everybody and then wondering, you guys don't believe me, do you? You think I fudged these numbers. Whether they did or not, I would feel like they might be, So again, it's something we do, but that's not an integral part of Session Zero. But if you're all together, we enjoy doing it. Everybody cheers each other on as they roll the dice or points and goes, oh my god, that sucks. Whichever way it is.
Yeah, and also it's always amusing when Drain is like, no, Christy, you roll next. It's like, why are you afraid to roll your I'm gonna roll so bad. She insisted on being last. It was like, why? What's the okay? It's not gonna change what you type in and what comes out,
Right. That's right.
As far as I can tell. But it's fun. You're right. It
really is. That's Session Zero, I don't want to say it's a relatively new concept, but it isn't an old concept either. Certainly the term Session Zero isn't. We used to, back in the day, back in AD&D 2nd edition times, we'd all have a character roll-up session. That's what we called it. Where everybody would just roll their characters and talk about their characters. But there was less discussion. There was less talking about things like we do now, about homebrew rules and what your character, how you want to have character synergies and what can you do from a storytelling point. It was more, as we said, just, I'm going to play a barbarian. Watch me roll my stats. I'm going to play a bard. Watch me roll my stats. You know, and that's kind of what we did. But more recently, and I want to say the first time I heard Session Zero was probably 3rd edition, right before it merged to 3.5. And then, of course, it's become more and more of a thing to where now it's getting more and more accepted that it is a thing you do.
Yeah.
We see, I know you troll a lot of the same Facebook D&D group forums that I do.
Oh, yeah.
And you often see someone say, what's the point of a Session Zero? We never do a Session Zero. I don't need a Session Zero. To me, there's only one answer to that. Do a Session Zero and see if you change your mind afterwards.
Right.
Because I can't imagine not having a Session Zero for a campaign anymore.
You know, it's right. And here's my biggest, like, if I was to sell what a Session Zero is to people, it's a way to reset your excitement and hype for the game, right?
Good idea, yeah.
Because we on How We Roll, we play 20 to 50 sessions of 3 hours each in a given campaign. I love all my characters, or most of my characters. Some of them are more successful than others, but that's, you know, just a player thing, like what I might have done right or wrong. But there does come a time of burnout, right? Where you've been playing the same class for a year and a half, over several weeks, and you just want something new, something fresh. And I find that Session Zero is a way to, like, get reinvigorated into the game. You know, the prospects of playing something new, different level, different difficulty, different style of campaign with different homebrews possibility. It actually really makes you excited again to play. And that, I think, is predominantly why I think Curse of Strahd, our Session Zero, was so successful, is because we were all together and we got to come up with some dynamic, something that worked with our party makeup and getting to play what we wanted to play. No one was ever told, no, you can't play that. We all kind of had a different idea of what we wanted to play, so there's no overlap or confliction.
Yeah. I mean, and there was a couple of different ideas that got thrown around.
Right.
And that was one of the things I said as well, hey, we can make this work, but I don't want this to be a thing at the expense of so-and-so's character idea. I want them to be able to play the class, race, everything that they want to play. I don't want anybody at the table making a sacrifice. Because to be honest, Curse of Strahd is probably going to take a year.
Yeah.
I mean, to get through. So, you know, that's the thing. So we wanted to make sure of that. But Shaggett's absolutely right. I know you were. I know Crispy was, and I didn't really get chance to talk to Jane or Matt so much. Player 5 was. But we were all so excited for Session Zero. Like, we were just as excited as we would have been playing the campaign for the first time. It was just a lot of hype. We were so ready to get to the table. And
you know, we've re-rolled many characters. We played many characters on How We Roll over the many years. And it's always nice to approach it with fresh eyes again, in a sense, right? Like, for yourself, maybe to see what challenges you can give yourself with this new character that you might not have done with other characters. But it's also just like, all right, we're going to have a couple week break, you know, a little downtime, but we're raring to go so that when we come into that first episode, that first session where we're playing, we are ready, we are hyped, we are excited. And you know, it comes across, especially when you're trying to entertain people. It's like...
Well, and it's like, for me, I had written my intro into the Curse of Strahd. which is totally different than the general intro or the start. And I'd written it a certain way, and then after the session 0, I was like, I want to change this now because there's a new thing to play with. So it allowed me the opportunity to kind of go, I can do this with this. I can take this, and because that's the other thing is, and it's a backstory is a different thing than session 0, but during session 0, you get fuel that helps you build a backstory.
Yeah.
And when that happens, I think all good DMs like, wherever possible, to incorporate elements of people's backstories. Again, why was Session 0 so important with Curse of Strahd? Because it was important to tell the players, or remind the players, realize you are going through the mist into Barovia, and you can't get back until things happen. You are not going to run into your long-lost uncle or aunt, probably, unless it is very specific that it's predetermined that they came through into the mist and they're here somewhere.
Right.
You're not going to necessarily be able to do certain things because there is no tie-in back to the real world for you as such. So those were all things that were important, so that people went away and as they wrote their backstory, didn't write themselves into a hole and then go, oh, well, there's no way I can achieve these goals of mine because, I can't. They're all back there.
I'm going to Barovia. Yeah.
Right. So, you know, that was an important aspect. And yeah, you guys, I started to say his name and or say a name, and then I was trying to not to throw out character names or whatever, and so I said, oh yeah, player 5, but as you guys probably have now just figured out, Satchmo will be playing Curse of Strahd with us, so we will be running a 5-player.
Satch is returning to our Monday group.
Yep.
So we will have 5 players to
that's right.
get killed off.
Yep. And
in a TPK.
Last time round that Satch played D&D with us on a Monday, he played a chickie. This time he is going the other way. He's playing a dude, so it will be a he this time, or whatever.
Or whatever. Satch will be playing this or whatever. It's like, well, you kind of
just because. Hey, we don't know what the character's pronouns are going to be. So there we go. But no, I think it's Mr. the character, perhaps. But I think that's the thing is this session 0, we come away with it. As you said, we started at 7. I think it was 11:30, 7 Central Standard Time. It was 11:30 when
we did go long because Gorbat started finding tokens for our characters, and
we had fun playing. Let's make.
We had a lot of fun.
I made all the characters tokens, and that was hilarious fun as well because some of these tokens are so good.
I'll just say he showed me a token of me. I loved it. And then I was like, well, my character's a certain way with his hair. And Gora's like, well, I'll fix it. And then 15 minutes later it comes back, and it's the most ridiculous token I've ever seen, but I absolutely love it. And that's what makes it, that also helps because you can then picture your stats, right? The token. And that's the kind of stuff that you don't usually have on a Session 0, but because we were having such a great time
we were just,
during it,
while the characters
was the
were
next
filling
logical
in their
step.
stuff, I was saying, okay, give me your description so I can make your tokens. And I'm sitting there talking to him, like, well, while you're throwing these descriptions, let me open up Photoshop. Let me start building. So we did. We made all the tokens there and then, and it was a lot of fun. So yeah, that's kind of that's our take on Session 0. Why it's important. Why you should take the time to have one. I know a lot of the times people are just eager to dive into the game and play.
Yeah.
Which you can do yourself a favor, I think. if you've got a long game session, nothing says you can't do your session 0 and then start playing. You know.
Yeah. Although I kind of like the space between, so things can percolate and marinate and get settled. Because, you know, when you're drawing up your characters during the session 0, there's a lot of like tertiary crap that you don't always want to fill in right away. You're like, oh, backstory. I mean, background, school tool proficiencies, but, you know, and that's the kind of thing that I think over the next week or two you can fill out. But
yeah,
I think it's different for us because we're an established group that have been playing for a while. If you're coming into a session 0 with a team of new people that you've never played with before, my advice as a player is ask questions. Just get as much information as you can to see where people might differ, where they might be similar, what styles they like to play, how they like to play, whether they're roleplay heavy, whether the combat desired heavy, and also what the DM is like, how the DM would rule things. Don't be afraid to ask. And especially don't be afraid to ask the DM what world we're going into, especially if it's a homebrew world that he or she wrote up, right?
Tell me some important things about your world that I need to know. Is there some character, is there some background that if I'm a native of this world, surely I know certain things? Tell me stuff.
Right.
That's one of the cop-outs with this, is because they come from our homebrew world of, our homebrew world and the continent of Arconis, and they're going to where they have no clue, so they don't need that.
Right.
In fact, they don't want that. They shouldn't have that, because the idea is for it to feel weird and dark and alien and scary and, give them that constant moment and level of anxiety about where they're at, what's going on, and feeling out of sorts. So, there we go. We will, when we get to our Q&A, that will be your opportunity to throw questions regarding Session Zeros at us, and but not just limited to that. But now I've got something that I want to do, and move on to our next section, which we like to call...
Monster Mayhem.
Monster Mayhem. Well, a while ago, back in the early days of D&D, we did a little thing where I was encouraging players to create monsters and send them to me. And wherever possible, I incorporated them into our campaigns. One of those characters, or one of those monsters, was this one right here that I have... I had a 3.5 version of it. We now have a 5e version of it. The Epidermistress. And you'll see right down here at the bottom that the idea and concept for this is none other than Sassacre's. So she come up with the concept for it. She had the idea and she threw it across the table to me and said, hey, I don't know how to stat it, but here's what I'd like to see. So here she is, the Epidermistress. Now, for anybody that's interested, I will make this. This is a nice 5e stat page with a full stat block and descriptions and everything for this class. So any of you that want this, all you have to do is drop me a PM and give me your email address and I'll send it to you.
She's a beaut.
So, yeah, we're going to talk about this in our Monster Mayhem. As I say, it's idea by Sassacre. We've put that here on the thing, so she gets credit for coming up with this nasty little monster. So let's look at this thing. It is sort of just a vile hag-looking creature, but it can look like a lot of different things. My flavor text here says, "At first glance, I thought I had found my beloved Mildrew. She reached out to me, so I ran to help her. It was only then that I saw it was some foul creature wearing Mildrew's skin." So, Epidermistress, a seemingly harmless and frail old woman, emerges from the mists, her arms outreached as if begging for aid. No sooner have you laid eyes upon her that you feel a deep sympathy come over you. As you approach, a swift clawed hand flashes out towards you, and the clawed hand injects its unearthly venom. You stand paralyzed as you are painfully aware that this vile creature is flaying the skin from your very body. The Epidermistress flays the skin from its victim and wears it like a loose-fitting suit. The Epidermistress will look like its previous victim, or if enough time has passed, it will look more like a ragged and fleshy corpse. Some of the things that this thing does: changing appearance. Due to the nature of the Epidermistress, its appearance is likely to change at least every 2 weeks. Rotting skin. The skin of the Epidermistress rots away over time, and as such, it needs to find a new skin every 2 weeks. If it fails to do so, its charisma drops by 2 points per day until it reaches 0 and becomes monstrous and hideous. At this point, it can no longer blend in society, and it's forced to live in the forests and swamps. So let's take a look at this stat block. Medium undead. Technically, it's lawful evil. Natural armor class of 14. So hit dice 12d8 plus 24, giving an average of 78, has a movement speed of 30. It is fairly strong, being undead, strength of 16. Reasonably dexterous with a 14. Pretty sturdy with a 14 constitution. It is cunning and devious, with a 16 intelligence. Fairly standardized wisdom of 11, and technically, if you're purely going on the way it can charm and present itself, it's a 16 charisma, but I would encourage anybody to modify the charisma based on whose skin it's wearing.
And for how long it's been wearing it.
And how
right?
long it's been wearing it. Yep. It gets a +5 dex and will save. Those are advantages. +3 perception, +6 persuasion. It has resistance to necrotic damage and is immune to poison. It also has a condition immunities: charmed, exhaustion, frightened, and paralyzed, because it's undead. It has 30-foot blind sight, dark vision 60 feet, a passive perception of 13. It generally can speak most of the common languages: common, dwarvish, elf, halfling.
That's smart.
Yeah, it's intelligent, and of course it learns the language of the things it likes to take on the form of. And it would be a challenge rating of 5 in 5e. So special abilities it has: paralyzing venom. The claws of the Epidermistress contain a potent paralyzing venom. If a victim is struck by the claws of this creature, it must make a DC 15 Constitution save or be paralyzed. The target can repeat the saving throw at the end of each turn, ending the effects on itself on a success. It also has Turning Defiance, which basically means it gets advantage on saving throws versus turning undead. Because the way this undead comes into being, it's not really so much a religious abomination as really just a bizarre kind of twisted, warped, materialized creature. Flay skin. If unhindered, the Epidermistress will begin flaying the skin from a paralyzed victim. Each round it does so, the victim will take 1d10 plus 3 damage automatically. If you die before it's done, you're dead. If the victim is still alive after 6 rounds, all the skin has been flayed from your body and you die. It has actions. It has claws, which are +7 to hit. And they do 2d6 plus 3 damage, averaging 10, slashing damage, of course. As we mentioned before, if the target is a creature other than an undead, it must make a saving throw of DC 15 Constitution save or get paralyzed. Can repeat the saving throw to try to end it on its turn. It will take Epidermistress 6 rounds to completely flay the skin from its body. If that occurs, the victim dies. Each round, the victim fails a saving throw, and the Epidermistress is flaying skin. The victim takes 1d10 plus 3. It also has multi-attack, which means it can make a regular attack with both of those claws. Finally, it brings Charm to the table. The Epidermistress targets one humanoid it can see within 30 feet of it. If the target can see the Epidermistress, the target must succeed on a DC 15 Wisdom saving throw against this magic or be charmed by the Epidermistress. The charmed target regards the Epidermistress as a trusted friend to be heeded and protected. Although the target isn't under the Epidermistress's control, it takes the Epidermistress' request or actions in the most favorable way it can. Each time the Epidermistress does anything harmful to the creature, it gets to repeat the saving throw, ending the effects on itself on a success. Otherwise, the effects last 24 hours until the Epidermistress or until the Epidermistus is destroyed, is on a different plane of existence, or it chooses to take a bonus action to end the effects. So how would this creature act? What would it do? Obviously, it is not a super strong creature. It is not designed to take on a group. So the Epidermistus is going to try to isolate someone, pull them out of the group, charm them to get them close to it. Then, when the opportunity arises, paralyze them and make itself a new birthday suit out of the skin of the victim. Obviously, it's fairly intelligent, so it's not going to throw itself at a party that it can't get the upper hand on. But it really is an opportunist type of an attacker.
Yeah, it's really not going to go for a party of more than 2 people at a time. I mean, it's smarter than that to a degree. Sass says the original idea was much more messed up. She intentionally targeted pairs, charmed one, had them kill and flay the other. The only problem, I mean, that is a messed up idea, Sass, but charm in 5th edition doesn't really work that way.
Right.
Like, you know, it has mechanically kind of stricter in a sense. So, but this is the same kind of deal. I'm going to charm you and then flay you, flay someone else, and then probably flay the other charmed person as well.
Right, yeah. I mean, and in theory, it could still do that. I mean, in theory, it could charm one person to get them to lure their friends into the woods or something.
Or that too.
And then once it's got them out there, okay. Paralyze, flay. The only difference is it's not going to have the person flay the skin. The reason I didn't go that route more than anything is I figured that the Epidermistus is very skilled at skin flaying, whereas an average person might not be. So would there be a skin worth wearing after Tolgar skinned Emlyn?
Probably not.
There you go. I've skinned him. What am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah, and her armor class is not very strong at high, 14 at 5th level. You're going to hit that more than you're going to miss for sure. And hit points too. I mean,
this is no tanky character. It's got some good abilities, but in a straight up fight, it's not that tough. This is the concept. We welcome any of you to shoot over ideas. If you would like to see us turn one of your creations into a nice, beautiful, statted character sheet like this that we can give out, you'll get full credit. We've watermarked it how we roll, but whoever come up with the idea, it's in here so that we give them credit. And as I said, we will make this available to anybody that wants it. So all you need to do is let me know that you want it. Shoot me your email address, and I will forward it to you. Probably the best way to do that is to email howweroll@gmail.com.
Also, Mythical Paladin, he asked, what about the Epidermistus? Well, maybe you should make one.
Yeah. I mean, technically, this thing could be a Mister or a Mistress. Depends on what skin it takes, I guess.
Yeah, it's true.
So, But,
Epidermistus.
Yeah. But, yeah. So, as I said, if you want this, just drop me a line at howweroll@gmail.com and with your email address, and I will forward you a copy of it. And if you would like to submit a monster for us to present and talk about on Monster Mayhem, do the same thing. Send it to us, and I will work it up and throw it out there.
And I imagine they don't have to come up with the stat blocks. No. I mean, they can if they want to.
If you think you can stat it, go ahead. What I will do is when I receive it, I will go over it, and if I think it's unbalanced or whatever, I may change the challenge rating or modify some things or whatever to make it better for generic consumption. Let's put it that way.
No.
When it goes out of the door, it'll be a little different. But, you know, for the most part, what we're looking for is concepts, ideas.
Right.
You know, some of the other ones we've had before, we had Rock Hornets. We had...
oh, yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, we had some kind of... Junk Farmer gave us some kind of weird... octopoid something or other hybrid, if I remember. And, you know, at one point we had quite a few of those thrown out to us. So, if Nifter got blown up, this would be the perfect way to bring him back one more time. The Rock Hornets were rocks, that's right. So, yeah. But there we go. So, by all means, as I said, if you want a copy of this, all you got to do is drop me an email, let me know, and I will send it to you. And by all means, do with it as you will. Use it in your games. Modify it if you feel like you want to change it up or whatever. But generally, just, you know, get it, enjoy it, play with it. So, alrighty. Well, last but not least, we're going to go on to our last section tonight, where we throw the door open and we're going to take some questions.
Questions and answers.
Alrighty, so yeah, let's go ahead and open the floor. Now is your opportunity to ask us questions. Our topic tonight was Session Zeros, why you should have one, how you should run one, what you do with one. By all means, ask us questions about that. But if you've got any other questions, D&D related, now is a good time to throw them at us.
You know, if you really want us to just go offline, just don't ask us anything, because then we'll just be like, well, okay, got nothing too.
But yeah.
But, you know, please ask questions.
Generally, the Harrow chat is not great with question asking. We know.
It's all good. It's all good. It's a love you.
We assume it's because we fill you with such vibrant and poignant information that you no longer have questions to ask.
Yeah, we answer everything. We're super talented at this.
That's right.
Yeah, most of it's covered. Yeah.
But yeah, it's these little why did you let Satch DM again? Someone had to do it. No, honestly, no, I can tell you why, because we've been on Thursdays, we decided instead of, and this was mostly for me, after DMing 5 years, Mondays and Thursdays constantly, and doing, as Satch now well is aware, which I'm kind of grinning inanely at, I know it was torturous, but I sure did love hearing you complain about how much work goes into it. Because I was like, yes, and now he understands. But yeah, doing it Mondays and Thursdays, it is a lot of work. Because we do so much graphical presentation. And it was great because Satch took a different approach with that, which was unique and different and awesome. But no less the work, in fact, probably more work. But I was getting to the point where it was like, I'm too much D&D. So we started to say, okay, well, let's keep playing D&D on Mondays, but to give me a break, let's play other shit on Thursday. So yeah, we played Star Wars, the role-playing game, Call of Cthulhu, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. We've done a few crazy-ass one-shots. But we still love D&D. I just didn't want to DM it. And it was like, who else would we like? Who would work for us? Who has the brain that works in the way we work? And I knew Satch run games before, and I knew he had mentioned numerous times he'd like the opportunity at some point to run something. So it was like, yeah, careful what you wish for. So it was like, yeah, why don't you run us a short campaign? You know, give us a few weeks, and it was great because for a little while, I didn't have to do as much prep, and it really helped. Not only did it allow me to play a fun character, which I hardly ever get to do, but it really gave me the opportunity to revitalize my energy and my creative juices and stuff like that. You know, and you did a fantastic job, and we had a lot of fun. So, you know,
yeah, that was super successful. It was such a blast, and yeah, you know, also Thursdays are hard because we alternate what we're playing. You know, we know that we're going to return to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay and Catarel and Matthew Bain and Bertilda and Odette and continue that story. But we don't want to do it so close to just having finished doing it, right? I mean, that's part of the thing with like keeping it fresh. But you know, then making Gord do another Call of Cthulhu, or you know, it's like, or that's a lot of work on its own in a different way because it's Call of Cthulhu and it's, you know, so it was a nice welcome reprieve, and it was
definitely
very fun, very, very fun.
Beta DM Dragon says, do you see Arconis getting airships now that Radovan and the group have seen one and returned, and didn't they set up potential trade partners? Okay, so in Beneath the Veil, there was one particular dirigible with a particular captain that was... They had a vessel that was capable of making it to the Arconian mainland, and they had set up specifically a trade route with some dwarves in the mountains, in that one big mountain hold.
Like the Varrock dwarves? What was the name of their place? Yeah, something like that.
That's it. So...
far to the north. Yeah.
They were doing trades, but it was, if you remember, it was all incredibly Loctite and turnkeyed and kind of very on the lowdown. You know, the Sidorians, they protect the lore and the knowledge of black powder like nobody. I mean, it is something that they are fully aware that it is to their advantage for nobody else to have this stuff for them. So as it stands right now in the game, there is really only one dirigible that is capable of making that journey. And the way things are, it's still, there's no real plans or architecture in place to where black powder would make it to the mainland. And by design, because we don't want it to be a constant thing. I'm not saying that at no point will there ever be a situation where that does happen, because I'm not going to pigeonhole myself, but it won't be something that is mainstream for sure.
I mean, also you got to think, like, yes, Radovan, Kia, and Marla witnessed this and are aware of it. I imagine if they return to Iridian, to the king and the Vizier Tadros, they would, Radovan for sure would be, oh, by the way, there's this crap up north that's crazy. Right. But how then would those connections be placed and made, right? I mean, that's a multi-year project in the making, I imagine, at best, and you know, like, to get some kind of thing going. That's not to say there isn't other magical means of transport that we've come across. We've come across ships that could go really fast. We've come, you know, hell, didn't we go to the Sirens Cave to get something? Didn't that take some magical transportation? You know,
we've come across a couple of magically imbued ships.
Right.
But this was the first one that kind of flew like that.
Right, to fly like that.
Yeah. Herapixel says, I think someone asked this before, but has Gore or any cast played Curse of Strahd in part or all of it? Okay, so the original Ravenloft, I've played in once and ran probably 3 times. That was prior to Curse of Strahd. I had read Curse of Strahd, the module, cover to cover when it first came out. Liked it, but one of the things on How We Roll, we decided early on, was for a couple of different reasons why we didn't want to run anything published. The first reason was everybody was doing it. Second reason, we didn't want to give spoilers, because you want to be able to watch and enjoy the show, and I didn't want there to be a reason, oh, I don't want to know what happens next in this, so I'm not going to watch the show because they're playing what we're playing. any more than I wanted DMs being pissed at me because I was giving everything away. But so we had those sort of reasons. Plus, it's a lot easier to do your own stuff because you don't have to worry about certain things when you're live streaming it. But at this point, if you were gonna play Curse of Strahd by now, you have had more than enough opportunity to do so. Regarding cast, Matt, aka Snugs, started DMing for a very small group at the very beginning of Curse of Strahd. They did not get very far. Christy played in that, but they only really just ran a few sessions. So they've played a piece of it, but not anywhere near enough to call it playing the campaign.
Yeah, I mean, of the cast, I'm pretty sure Matt, having been the DM of it, probably read more content than was played. But again, Gore is doing a lot of tweaking and how rerollizing work on it, right? Making it for us. So it'll be new for him too, for sure. I mean,
that's right. Oh yeah,
I imagine he'll be just as surprised.
There's a lot of aspects that I've changed already and modified and things for various different reasons that will mean that even if you have played it, and by definition, Curse of Strahd is one of the few modules that you could play through yourself multiple times with different characters and have a different experience, all because a lot of it comes down to the tarot card reading. So,
the tarot card.
The tarot card readings, indeed. Junk Farmer says, how do you help a player as a DM that tends to roll low numbers on the usual? Honestly, I think the thing is, you've got two options. If you know the character is so bad that they're not going to have fun with it, you just kind of got to say, you know what, this isn't going to work. Roll another set, right? But if it's not so bad and you know that the player, then what you can do is say, hey, look, you can have a lot of fun with this. They're like having a rogue that has a bad dexterity, right? Well, just because roguish people tend to be somewhat dexterous doesn't mean they all are. You can be a clumsy oaf that stumbles around and gets yourself into trouble a whole lot, and you can have fun with that. The flip side is when a character with shitty stats does something great, it's so much more of a stand-up and cheer moment because it wasn't expected. So you can gain more elements of joy and excitement out of it. At the end of the day, it's down to the player, not the DM, to decide, can I have fun with this?
Right.
I can point out examples. I can kind of say, you can do this, you can do that. Here are some things you could do. Here's a way you could play this character and make it work. Hey, don't focus on this. Focus on this, Prop your stats up with gadgets or gear or whatever. Become more of a... let's take Batman as an example. Take Batman's money away. He's a fairly athletic, pretty intelligent dude. But is he Batman? Hell no. He's Batman because of bulletproof suits and gadgets and gear. So again, you could take that concept and take an average character and prop them up with tools and skills and that sort of stuff.
We, the only player on How We Roll's history who had to roll 4 sets for the character was Matt. And that's because the first 2 sets he rolled was 4d5 drop lowest, not 4d6 drop lowest. And none of us who were part of that session 0,
it was so funny,
saw it. We just saw the lowest rolls in the history of rolls rolled. And
like,
it's the second.
These sets.
It literally was like 7, 8, 7, 6, 5. And we were like, what the fuck are you rolling? And then we caught it that he rolled the wrong 4D. He didn't roll 4d6. He rolled 4d5.
He typed in the macro and then just copied and pasted it dozens of times, making these stats. But when he typoed it the first time, so yeah, it was, the /R 4d5 5
D1.
D1, which is the drop 1. And it should have been 4D6. So, of course, he was basically rolling a dice with 1 point dropped off of it every time. He couldn't have rolled more than a 15. Couldn't have done.
Yeah, no. I think he rolled 115. Everything
so
else was like...
his average was lower, and he rolled 2 sets, and it was so bad. I was like, dude, you can't... Roll another set. And then as he rolled the 3rd set, I was like, hold on. This is why, you dumbass. So then we rolled 2 sets with the correct dice, and all was fine after that.
He was seething, though. He was so upset with himself.
Yeah, for him, it was just a typo.
Yeah.
But none of us caught it. We're all sitting there watching it, and none of us caught it in 3 sets. Did they ever figure out the puzzle? Funny, we did, but our logic was flawed logic how we got to the answer, yet we got the right answer anyway.
We got the right answer, but we approached it with a wrong couple of logic lines.
And full disclosure, credit to Nat for most of it, because Nat did way more. Her brain worked out way more of it than mine did, or Shaggett's did, or Spook worked out a little bit. I think me and Shagget had the first few down, and then we were like, my brain hurts.
Yeah, because like after the first several lines where you deduce and logically remove some things, it's like, do you then circle back again to go through them again, or do you then go from the bottom up now instead of top down, bottom up? I mean, it just broke my brain. So Nat did it.
Well, the good news is you can go back to Mindenbrook Sorrow whenever you're ready, but at least you got to catch this live. So, do we got any more questions? Questions? Scrolling down.
Come on, any other questions? Session 0 questions? D&D questions? How we roll questions? Any questions? Please ask us something.
I hope Gore makes it extremely brutal. I will say this. Some of the concepts that I'm putting in will make it more difficult, but not because the fights will be physically harder. One of the problems with the Curse of Strahd is there is an inherent balance issue with some of the encounters. Some of them are entirely too difficult, and some of them are entirely too easy. The other thing you got to remember with Curse of Strahd is because it is very sandboxy, players can choose to go to any region at any time, and regions are designed to be a certain way. So the book may be planning for you not to really be able to mess with this until level 5. Show up there at level 3, see what happens. But there's nothing organic to stop that happening. And the thing is, there shouldn't be. There really shouldn't be.
What the what?
Twitch Warner, thank you for the resub!
Thank you, Twitch. I will say, you know, the way we have been doing D&D and Gorbad's games for these past 7 to 8 years is whenever there's an encounter, there's a general assumption that we may be able to overcome it. And only a few times have we had to retreat. Like, it was kind of bashed over our head. You should run. This is not safe for you. That was a part of the session 0 with Gore said. It's like, listen, you're going to have encounters where don't assume that you can overcome it. It might be too difficult for you. And that is a switch that we as players have to kind of like work into our mind. Like, this is a different kind of game, which is challenging and fun, and I can't wait for it, you know?
Yeah, no, it's one of those things that a lot of the time players have this mentality, and I'm not saying our players in particular, but players in general. Oh, well, the DM wouldn't put it here if it wasn't meant for us to fight, or if we couldn't. You cannot go into Curse of Strahd with that mentality. Yeah. The way you succeed in Curse of Strahd is to research, to study, to ask questions, to recon, to figure out what you're going up against, rather than just trying to muscle your way through. Because nearly all of the main stuff in Curse of Strahd, you won't beat it toe-to-toe without some inside knowledge. You know, and it's going to be really interesting because one of the things I want to do, and I don't know whether it'll be incorporated in this so much, but we'll see. But I want to kind of break down Curse of Strahd, and when I have a section that I deviate from, I want to have an opportunity where I'm probably just do an impromptu stream and just say, hey, let's talk about this. Here's what it said in the book. Here's what I did. Here's why I did it. One of the things that I'm just going to kind of throw this out there, and again, this is not for this won't be a spoiler, but it will give you an opening mindset into why I think the way I do. Strahd von Zarovich has a lot of badass abilities. Some of them would almost seem like in the big fight, when he suddenly starts pulling some of the shit that he can do, the players would be like, how the fuck can you beat this?
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. One of the things that you do, that I'm going to do in Curse of Strahd, is I'm going to make sure that a lot of these abilities, the players will either see firsthand ahead of time, or will learn about as they go through, by when they accomplish different things, win a friend here, win a friend there, you know, getting told, hey, I have heard he can do this. I have seen him do this. Or allow the players to witness something so that when they get to that final battle, they have a chance to, okay, we know he can do this. What are we going to do to counter that? How are we dealing with this? And that way, I can give them a very real fight and real experience without them feeling like they were cheated out of the end fight. And I want to do that because I want them to have the ability to lose. And, you know, it is one of those adventures where you are realistically likely to lose. Character death is a thing. We had that discussion again, session 0. I said, look, I'm going to tell you straight. If you do not follow these hedences, and if you don't listen to what I'm telling you right now, and pick your battles, learn when it's time to run, do the research, you are going to lose characters. It will be a thing, so get ready. It may be a thing anyway. But it's, you know.
Yeah. Beta DM asked, it might have been mentioned at the beginning, but are you going to be doing Dialogues and Dice again fairly regularly? The general plan as it stands is that these will be off-schedule streams when we have a topic and we have content to talk to you guys about, or to have a guest to interview. I personally prefer doing these on the Mondays and Thursdays. We don't have a show or a show's canceled because of some illness or ailment.
Yeah. But
it's not a set schedule. Like, we're not gonna, you know, we don't have a show on Monday, right? Because it's still, we're on the break. We're not gonna have another Dialogues and Dice then. No, but we will kind of fill out the schedule so you guys get content as frequently as, you know, we can offer. And we do have other topics out down the pike, which we've already kind of talked amongst ourselves, Gore and myself.
When we come up against, you know, what happens is we both have a discussion and we suddenly go, you know what, this is a thing we need to talk about.
Yeah.
And then I make a note on the board up here, and then we make content. And so it'll happen organically, I think, really.
Yeah, we'll announce it for sure. We'll give the heads up, like, this is going to be a Dialogues and Dice instead of a regular show. Or if it's a really off schedule, different day. But we're not going to return to the old format of every Tuesday that we used to do for the old Dialogues and Dice. Because those were really about the campaigns themselves, you know? And those Dialogues and Dice, we talked about what happened that Monday and Thursday when we met on, you know, when we did it on Tuesday. We're not doing it. This is generic conversations, stuff about D&D and tabletop. No.
Terrapixels, it's... Curse of Strahd is written in such a way that the first thing that I could tell, you know, any DM before running a module like Curse of Strahd is you have to read the whole thing. You can't just pick a section and then read it when the players come across it. Oh, next week my players are going to this area, so I'm going to read up on that area. Because it's all interwoven. Things that happen in this area can have effect on this area, and if you're not aware of that, things can kind of go pear-shaped and you can trash parts of the adventure for yourselves. But just as a generic thought process, you need to be able to give your players options, right? So my goal, I want my players to be scared. I want them to know how dangerous it is. I want them to feel desperate at times. I want them to feel hopeless at times. What I don't want is for them to go through an entire campaign with a there is no way to win mentality. That's not fun for anybody. Strahd has the habit of instilling that because of how it's balanced, because of the fact that, you know, I mean, case in point, and we talked about it before, so I'm going to talk about it again because that way it's definitely not a spoiler. One of the pre-published, one of the adventure hooks, there's like 4 adventure hooks that it gives you. One of the adventure hooks that it gives you, bearing in mind it knows and believes you are starting at level 1, is your level 1 characters are hired to hunt down a pack of werewolves. It's the most bizarre thing to me to be in a published adventure. 'Cause reasons, right? First of all, let's assume that your level 1 characters know what werewolves are. If they know what a werewolf is, they probably know something about how tough it is and would know we couldn't take on a werewolf, let alone many werewolves, to necessitate a pack. It's not gonna happen. No thanks, not interested. Or the person that is like hiring these people, unless it's a legendary Lyra bullshit line where, oh yeah, we've killed thousands, is probably going to be like, oh, you're up against werewolves. Okay, tell us about these werewolves. What are they like? What are they? Oh, on second thoughts, I think I'll look for somebody else. It's just a bad hook. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So right there, if you use that adventure hook and you take it down the wrong, you could TPK your party before the adventure starts, basically. And then there's the pre-adventure that we call Durst Manor. I'm not calling it what they call it in the book because it's stupid. So in Durst Manor, the way it is written, again, you're not coming out of this place alive, only by luck. So, and you also come out of it going, well, that was a thing. How does this set us up for Curse of Strahd again? So, my version of Durst Manor has been retooled, rebalanced, but it has also been instilled with things that will make it feel relevant to the Curse of Strahd. It has things that are going to happen that will make them realize a little bit about where they're at, what's going on. And then in true How We Roll fashion, later down the road, they will learn some things about Durst Manor and the Durst family that will bring it all full circle. And initially, they might not understand some things, but then later they'll be going, oh, that makes sense. Right. So, you know, that's the kind of thought process.
If anyone is curious, you can go to the Children of Drakkar campaign on YouTube and find out the Renazin the Creator dungeon that the party had to go through. It was a prime example of teetering on the edge of the players feeling hopeless because there were many more rooms and traps than we were expecting. Gore made a very elaborate dungeon that's befitting Renazin the Creator. I mean, it was great. But during it, you could see us session by session getting a little bit more, oh my God, there's another room. Oh my God, like it mentally took a toll on us as players as well as characters. And it made for good content. And at the end of it, it felt rewarding and, you know, believable as a justifiable, like we succeeded, we won.
Yeah, I mean,
and this is what we got from it. But if Core, honestly, if you had another session of traps, we as players would have rioted. We would have been like, God damn it, I feel so hopeless right now.
Part of one of the things you learn through experience as a DM. This isn't saying, this isn't talking about, oh, I know this, I know that, whatever. I've been doing this a while. Logic dictates you learn things over time, right? Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've really come to learn is what can a party of a certain class and level, what can they handle? How far to the edge can I take them without them falling off it? And that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on doing pretty well, I think, is getting our parties time and time again right to that edge so that when the end encounter happens, it's a challenge. It's a struggle. There's desperation. Switch Runner, thank you for the cheer, my friend.
Thank you,
much
Switch.
Much love. It's, because... But one of the things that also happens is dice, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep,
dice happen.
Dice happen.
So, one of the things that can occur is for example, in one campaign, and again, in case some of you haven't seen it and are going to watch it, I won't say which, I won't give you details, but in one campaign, the big bad, controlled by me, did so bad. My dice sucked. And the players kicked his ass. They didn't just beat him, they kicked his ass. It should have been a tough fight, but it wasn't. And some DMs might have been like, this is too easy. I'm going to buff this character. I'm going to make him tougher. I'm going to give him more. I was like, our players have had enough fights where they've barely come through. They have had fights where a player has died. You know what? It is okay for them to get a great victory. It is okay for them to be the heroes that they are meant to be. It's okay for them to beat the living bejesus out of this dude and come out of it relatively unscathed. Because it could have so easy gone the other way.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that people sometimes acknowledge and sometimes forget. On How We Roll, we do something at our table that a lot of other tables don't do. I roll all my dice openly. You see what I roll, the players see what I roll. There are times when I roll 20s and they're like, holy shit. There are times when I am rolling terrible. But it's authentic and it's a perfectly okay thing in D&D as a game to roll behind your screen. What DMs have screens for? You hope that they're rolling, if they're fudging dice, you're hoping they're fudging it to benefit the story and stop a really terrible thing from happening that would ruin the game.
No.
Most of them do that. But by rolling the dice openly, our players truly know if they died, they died. But if they won, they also knew what the odds were, how hard the battle was, and they truly know that they deserved the victory.
Beta, also regarding the assumption that all encounters are beatable, I think that's a generic player fault, right? Like whatever the DM throws at me should be within my wheelhouse of potential. The trick is really, as the dungeon master, to put just enough clues in that, maybe you should run and hide. Maybe you shouldn't charge in there swords ablazing. And, bank on the fact that there are possibly 3 to 5 to 6 players at the table. Some of them are going to get those clues. Maybe not everybody. That was the biggest example. Was when we were in the Feywilds as that party in Sidoria, right? We went to the Feywild temporarily, and we went into that centaur cave. Gore was very descriptive that a whole lot of bad things were coming out of that tunnel, and I, as Dalek, didn't get the memo. And as a player, it's like, no, let's funnel them and shit. And it took Satchmo and the others to be like, no, we're running. This is not doable at this point in time.
Right.
And I let them, and it was the right call because I thought we could fight there. And everyone else was like, no, Gore's making it very clear that we should probably not be at the entrance to this cave when they come out.
Yeah, and that's the thing, as a DM, you should never, it's perfectly fine to have some situations where your players won't always be able to win every time. But I truly believe that any time one of those situations is presented, it is your job to make sure that you have done everything you can to give them fair warning and allow them an out. I'll give you a more recent case. When in the last campaign, the last episode, or second to last episode, they were all, Lyra was being basically lazy and not checking out all the paths and saying, oh yeah, I've checked that, there's nothing down there. So they started going further into the mountains, and they're having this discussion, and they're being very, very loud and echoey in the corridors. And then they start hearing footsteps in the dark, like drums in the deep. And I'm like, okay, you hear running footsteps. It sounds like a lot of heavy running footsteps. And there was a little tiny alcove. And at one point they were all like, well, we'll all stand in this alcove and fight. I'm like, y'all are going to die. Because you have nowhere to run. If you go in that alcove, you are trapped. Right now, you've got multiple ways to go, but if you choose the fight in the alcove, if the fight goes bad, you can't get out.
Yep.
And then at the last minute, so I laid it on real thick. As they were watching, they saw ogre after ogre after ogre after ogre passing by, acting like they were going round to flank them. And it was then that I started noticing the players were like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit.
So and also because we didn't know what the rest of the...
Right, you didn't know.
We had scattered out, so they could flank us.
If they're going that way, there must be a way behind us. Lyra, you said you checked it. And so at that point, Matt's character uses Meld Stone, puts a wall up, and they back out of there. Great strategy, but it was the right thing to do. That fight, they could have won that fight not in the alcove, but in the corridors. But it was a fight they didn't need going into the room with all the big bads, right? So it would have been the difference between going into that room semi-fresh and going into that room beat to death.
Because we were already struggling with some of our spells at that point.
That was the thing. So again, but I made it very clear. There's a lot of these dudes. I reminded them, you fought some of these back on the riverbank. That wasn't that easy a battle, and there were only 5 of them. So, it was some things that they really started to pick up on and realize. And that's the thing, is most good DMs, if you listen to what they're telling you, listen, they should give you hints. For example, I'm for changing up monsters. I don't believe that there's any reason why every single troll has to be the exact same stat block.
Yeah.
They don't all have to regenerate. They don't all have to be susceptible to fire. Maybe some of them are not susceptible to fire. You should give some hint or clue to that. You should make sure that there is some kind of... even if it's fairly subtle, so that when they try to do something and they're like, oh shit, that makes sense. Like if you have trolls that can't be burned, have them a reddish brown color, have them living in a hot environment, give that hint that they're not anti-heat. Again, more recently, the final construct that they fought, at the very beginning, a big suit of empty armor, and then flames start to appear inside his head, and they like flare up, so he's got fire in it. Well, Anybody, if you guys know, like an iron golems and stuff, if you hit them with fire, it actually heals them. They repair. The irony of it is, Jagged's character is lobbing these spells at it and missing, and I'm like, you have no idea how lucky you are. You're missing right now. Finally, I think he managed to hit it with one.
No, I did it.
No, you didn't hit it. That's right. No,
I
that
never
was revealed
did.
at the end.
I got so frustrated I was missing, I resorted to magic missiles.
Yeah,
again.
that's right. But by saying...
Yeah, mythical, exactly. Right.
It has the flames inside, and their flames are like boiling, and stuff like that. It gives that hint that it is somehow akin to fire.
And I 100% did not get that hint. I mean, it went over my genius's head. It happens.
But if you hit it with one, and then I said,
I would have immediately
been like, the flames
like,
burst up all bright inside, and suddenly some of the dents like pop up, like you can see steam coming out of it. Yeah. Like it's suddenly full of steam, and some of the dents begin to pop out of it like a huge, big pressure cooker. You wouldn't have felt cheated, because you was like, well, that makes sense. Yeah.
No, the hints are there. The players just need to listen, and that's just a general hint.
Yeah,
it is.
And
we miss things all the time as players.
Yeah,
we're focusing on something else, and
it's the other thing when you play once a week. To your characters, something may have happened 5 seconds ago, but if it's the end of a session, there's a week between you returning to that session as a player. It's easy to forget subtle things. I used to have an old rule that said, if your character cannot read and write, you do not get to make notes at the table. I don't do that now because your notes are memory. That's what I look at it, is you're making notes so that your character, so you can remember as a player what your character would already know. So I look at it a little differently. The player making the notes isn't the same as the character making notes.
The saving grace of missing the hints that the Iron Golem healed with fire, even though I missed with all my fire spell attacks, was that Blasticus had no more spell slots. He was mentally exhausted at that time. So he made, he and I as a player made some blunders. And it is kind of a little fortuitous that the blunders kind of made logical sense. Like giving Lyra a scroll of burning hands, which also would have been bad versus the Iron Golem. But it also didn't work because Lyra can't cast wizard spells. So, Yeah, I mean, I like to justify it as like the player error can be justified with the character,
In 5e, if you can't cast a spell, a scroll is virtually useless to you.
Right.
In 3.5, you could actually prepare spells and get them to a point where other people could read and use the spell one time. So mechanical differences. How much time do you put into coming up with good hints for encounters, or do you do most of them on the fly? It's a balance of both. I try to think the encounter through ahead of time. I try to think about the pitfalls of the encounter, the challenges of the encounter, and then make sure that I've addressed those. But sometimes something will happen and an idea pops in and it's, ooh, I'm going to throw this out there. I'm going to say this. I should do this. So sometimes it's on the fly, but I try to think through the options, and never have a preconceived win condition. That's a golden rule of mine, is there should always be multiple ways to achieve a thing, not only one way. We will address this as a topic, misconceptions and terminology in D&D. I'll briefly scan on the concept here, railroading. You hear people talk about railroading. Railroading is bad, everything should be sandbox. Okay. Virtually every module you ever buy is going to railroad you. If your conception of railroad is being led. The problem is, that's not what railroading is. That is structure. Structure is a good thing. You should have structure. Thing A should lead to option B or C. It should maybe only lead to D, because it has structure. It gets you through a campaign or an adventure on a somewhat relative course. Strahd is a little different. Strahd is more sandboxy. But a lot of people think that that is railroading. What railroading truly is when you as a DM decide, okay, here is my big bad, and the only way to kill this big bad is you must do these 6 things and in this order, and I don't care how creative you get, I will not let you win unless you do my 6 things, because that's how I want this encounter to go. That's railroading. Okay, that's the difference. Railroading
but we will talk about that a little bit more.
Railroading is a thing that's misconcepted, but we will address that along with some other misconceptions in a different Dialogues and Dice. Hey Gore, when coming up with new campaigns, what do you find sparks your creativity? How much of the story do you have figured out before you start? Start one, I struggle feeling confident with my ideas, then after a while I toss them out. I'll give you 2 things. One, when I do a campaign, I come up with a concept, I think of a start, 1 or 2 key moments in the campaign, and an end. And then I flesh it out from there. And a lot of the times, I allow it to grow and happen as the players play through it. But I still have that level of structure where I know we're starting here, these key things need to occur, and then we get here. The other thing I'll tell you is, just from experience, if you ever have a good idea, use the good idea. Don't save it for a later campaign. Don't think you're going to use it differently at a different time. Use it now. Because you will forget.
Don't treat it like a magical one-use item that the DM gives you, that you say, I'm going to use it in my final encounter, and then say, well, I can save it for the next encounter. And then it stays in your character's inventory. That's exactly it. The good idea. The good magical item. The +4 oil.
If you got a good idea, whatever, get it out on the table.
Fucking
use the damn thing. Play it out, do you ever playtest an encounter against the party by yourself before a session to see if the creature or group you have them fighting is strong? Okay. I don't typically play out the whole encounter. What I do is I look at the character sheets and remind myself of their abilities to make sure that there's no inherent weakness that they have. Like, make sure that they have the abilities to defeat this thing. Make sure that they have some spells that will allow them to overcome some of its special abilities, so that there is a fight, not just an ass whooping. The thing you must also not do as a DM, people always talk about how players metagame. How, they meta. Players meta. They know knowledge. They bring knowledge from as a player to the character that they shouldn't have. So do bloody DMs, right? And that to me is worse. As a DM, it is not fair for me to write an encounter that I know is specifically designed to defeat my party, because I know they can't do these things, so they won't be able to stop this ability. Ha ha ha. You can do a little of that to make a challenge, but that's not how encounters should be designed. You should be making encounters to be fun for the players, not to defeat them. If they lose as part of that fun, that's fine. But if you make it specifically to beat them, you will win. You're the DM. I mean, the second you take a me versus the players approach, you will win.
Yeah. Gore and I have seen other games played on Twitch where the DM sends a berserking crazy creature, and instead of go for the random target, goes for the one particular thing that, the one character that could destroy it or stop it in its tracks. And you're kind of like, well, why did it go for that when there's a big hulking? Yeah. How did it know to go there? There's a huge barbarian right in front of it, and it's an enraged, crazy monster.
Right.
And yet it goes for the wizard in the back. Like, really? Yeah, come on.
Yeah, it's kind of like, okay, when you play out your NPCs, your big bad evil guy, whatever, your encounters, it is perfectly okay to do certain things based on what they know. In a battle, if an intelligent enemy, a caster, is at the back, and he's got minions between him and the cleric keeps running and healing everybody that his minions are trying to bring down, as an intelligent enemy, it is okay for him to try to find an opportunity to target and focus that cleric. That's smart. But if you have him do it to the point of he's willing to kill himself to succeed, would he though? You know, that's what you got to think about. So it's okay to use some tactics. It's right to use some tactics against the party, but you have to also process, why would the big bad do it this way? Why would he make these things? What's the risk to him for attempting to do it? I know that if I can kill the cleric, we can win this fight. I am not running past the barbarian with a huge axe to do it. He'll chop my head off. There is no, well, I happen to know that he can only do a maximum of 40 damage and I've got 80 hit points, so he can't possibly kill me with one hit, so I'm safe to do it. That's the thing that doesn't exist. That's a meta. Your big bad believes, if that fucker hits me in the head with my axe, with his axe, I'm going to die. That's the mentality he's got to have, right?
And players need to do that too with their characters. A lot of the times I see decisions during fights.
Take your pants off.
Decisions during fights being made where it's like, well, I see that this monster's dealing 1d6 plus 5 damage, and I have 40 hit points, so I'm gonna not deal. You know, it's like that's not what a character would think in that situation. Because it's not, you know, that's what a player sees. So you still have to treat that as a legitimate threat, you know.
Exactly.
Players do that too.
Right.
Don't do that as players.
Yeah,
no.
There is no action economy knowledge. The barbarian can only do one bonus action, and I know he's already done it this round. You know, perfect case in point. Survivability. I don't want to die. I'm not going to put myself unnecessarily at risk. In the same way, it's okay for enemies to run. There are no morale rules in D&D. There are no rules for morale. In some systems there are none in D&D. But how often have you've seen me have a pack of monsters start out numerically superior to the party, and then as they start to lose, some of them are like, fuck this, I'm out. And they'll run. Because that's what I think that they would do. That's the logic. We're losing this fight. There are not many things, unless they're mindless things like certain types of undead or whatever, or constructs, that are going to fight to the death pointlessly, right?
No.
So there's no rule for it. But yes, there is, because as DM, you can make any rule for any situation. So, you know, you can basically say, okay, I'm going to give this guy an intelligence saving throw, or a willpower save. Let's have a willpower save to see if he's got the balls to keep fighting. He failed? Okay, nope, he's chickened out. He's running away. You know, you can do those things. So,
Help you.
Ooh. Right, exactly. Undead minions, brainless. Keep on going. But any more questions, guys?
This is the last segment, so keep them coming.
Normally, we anticipate these kind of things taking probably 60 to 90 minutes, so you're already...
Yeah, you got us. But it's the first one back, right?
That's
the first one back in 60 years, so...
Yeah, so we don't mind. We can give you... we're not on a set time schedule, so, how do you deal with problem players like Shagit?
Yeah, Gore.
Yeah, I'll show you how. Here's exactly how you deal with problem characters like Shagit.
MC, it's called abuse. They abuse me. They make fun of me. That's basically how you deal with a problem player like me.
That's right. No, you just do this. And he vanishes.
Aww. Aww.
Okay, there, he's back. It's... we're fortunate that we don't really have problem players, and we're all mature enough to where if there is an issue, we can talk about it. We will pull each other aside and say, hey, this doesn't work, or do you realize that your character constantly doing this is making my life hell? And then sometimes the best way is to deal with it in-game. For example, when Kialiana was using her charm spell to control Radovan and make him do things that she wanted him to do, which, as a character, was a dubious way to treat a friend. But I don't think Jane realized as a player, she's basically saying, when I don't like what you're doing, I'm going to stop you and make you do what I want to do. So what Radovan did is once he realized what was going on, he flat out had a full-on confrontation.
Yeah.
And what did you basically tell her?
The character said, if you keep charming me, I'm leaving. I'm going away. You're losing me. And then as a player, I said, please don't charm me again. It's not fun. It doesn't work. We can make it work better. And we did. We started working well, because I don't mind my characters losing control. Matt cares. When Matt loses control of his characters, it's a huge point of contention.
Yep.
I'm okay with it, but not to an abusive, constant level.
Well,
which,
and again, knowing that is a thing that certain monsters and NPCs do in D&D.
Right.
It does happen. That is why you will typically see me roll randomly when that is going to happen. I like to roll randomly for picking targets if there's no obvious target. If you are in my face, if your barbarian is in my face and slugging away at this NPC, he's going to fight back. He's not going to be constantly thinking about, oh, well, but I bet I can kill that rogue with one hit, so I'm going to stop fighting this guy. No, he's going to fight for his life.
Yeah.
But if an ability comes, but if a gap opens, let's just say he drops this guy, and now there's the cleric, there's the rogue. Unless something has happened to give him a clear reason why one should be attacked over the other, I'll roll randomly. That way, there is no victimization. Nobody can say I had it out for him. And specifically with things that lead to taking player license from the players, like a charm, I roll randomly, wherever it makes sense. Because it isn't fun. The sad part is, when I roll randomly, it seems to be no matter what, it always ends up Snugs.
It's Snugs. Host Junior. No, Junk. No.
Bad, Junk. Bad.
It's those kind of abilities like Charm and the like, they make sense. And of course they should exist in the game. It is kind of messed up, though, that players have only one thing that they're responsible for the most part, and that's their character. And to lose that, you're literally doing nothing, right? You're sitting back, watching shit unfold, not participating, which kind of defeats the purpose of these games, is to participate. And that's why it's a common refrain not to split the party, because you don't want to split the time where two people get to do a lot of things and the other 2 or 3 people sit on their butts watching.
Right.
That's why it's a kind of player contract thing not to split if you can help it.
Right, yeah.
It's because you don't want to not do anything. That's not fun. Skipping turns sucks.
It's kind of like, the old adage is never split the party. If Stranger Things taught us anything, never split the party.
Which is what they always do in that fucking show.
Yeah.
Split the party.
But
actually, every season they split
the party, right? That's what makes it funny. But the thing is, there's 2 reasons. One, safety in numbers, right? That's a thing.
Of course, yes.
But more importantly, it is because when the group stays together, the whole group gets the attention. Whenever the group divides, the DM now has to split time. And when that happens, it always means that no matter how much you split that time, some of the players are now not getting to play all of the game. Many years ago in a Warhammer Fantasy campaign, I've told this story before, 2 brothers. And it never ever failed. The irony was, no matter how many times his character died, he always come back. The younger brother was always come back as a character called Klaus Rassic. Always Klaus Rassic. It was always his name. And he would always at some point try to pull me aside and say, my character's going to try to kill Dave, which was his brother, right? It was always a thing, constantly. And he would try, and then the party would alienate him, and he'd go off. And then what would happen is I'd have Scott to deal with over here, and the rest of the party over here. We played at Scott's house, so it wasn't like I could just say, well, you're gone, fuck off, right? So what I did was I said, okay, every player is entitled to 5 minutes. We had 9 players. Okay, so Scott, here's your 5 minutes. And then all the other players said, well, we're doing all of our actions together, so we get 40 minutes. So I then did 40 minutes with them and 5 minutes with Scott and 40 minutes with them. And it was not long before Scott realized if he was going to have any fun at these game sessions, he did not need to constantly keep going off on his own. He learned fairly quickly. So it was hilarious.
Genius.
But it's that perfect. Was the thing. But it did become disruptive.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that there are not times when the rogue should go ahead and sneak a little bit, or there may be reasons when you want to do some logical, but to do it for the sake of doing it, no.
I mean, yes, we have split the party on how we roll many times, but it did make logical sense, and you know, it's still fun to. I mean, it is still fun to watch other people do their thing.
Well,
you know, I mean,
great Scott.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the other thing with D&D is, as a DM, I like to encourage people to be infused and interested in what the other players do, right?
No.
If it is not your turn to shine at the table, I don't expect you roll your dice. Okay, I missed, I hit, I did this much damage. Right.
No.
All right, Jason, it's your turn. Huh? Oh, okay, let me think. What should my character do? No, you should have been doing that while the other players took their turn, right? You should have been involved. You should know what's happened during the turn. You were there. Your character was in that 6-second exposure of combat. You're aware of what happens. We're not going to keep stopping the game to say, okay, well, so-and-so's character did cure light wounds on so-and-so. He cast fireball. This happened here. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, I'll do this then. Roll the dice. Okay, cool. Don't do that. Don't be that guy.
Yeah, Beta, but I understand that, and it of course that makes sense. I mean, we have done some shows where someone had a headache, so they were like, "I'm not going to be as involved," which is completely fine. But I mean, that's also something that Session Zero. That's the point of Session Zero, is right to say, well, this might come up. You know, I mean, when we played with Bane initially, she had days that she just could not stream because she was on what later became known as Banecations. And that allowed Gorbad to plan ahead of time to account for some of these absences. So it wasn't just a canceled show. Right. You know, that's why Bane was kidnapped in one of their campaigns by the.
Yeah, because she went on a Banecation and
she wasn't
going to be there for 3 sessions. So
we planned ahead and did great content with Jane, Gore, and myself as Veslar and Arya.
That's it.
Because Piper was taken. You know.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, if you like, if you don't mind going off and doing stuff by yourself, and you don't mind other people doing stuff by yourself, that's okay, as long as your behavior during those times is socially acceptable and socially constructive. You know, as I said, just checking out of the rest of the game and only paying attention on your turn, it's not really the way you need to be. You know.
And again, Session Zero is a great way to
it's a good way to set those expectations.
Yeah.
But of course, you've got also we all communicate. So you can say, "Hey guys, I'm here because it's a game and I'm committed to being here, but I'm really not feeling that good, so my character's going to kind of take a bit of a back seat tonight." You know what? If you throw that out there, most decent players and DMs are going to be, "Okay, cool, we got you." And that's what'll happen, So you've got the poetic license to do what you need to do in those sort of things. Switch Runner, now you did ask the question before. I saw it and I was going to get around to it. Do your campaigns contain gods that interact at all, apart from players like paladins doing something bad? Well, without giving away too much spoilers, the answer to that is very much yes. We have had a background theme through the last 4 or 5 campaigns that things are happening to some of the gods. I'm going to use the term dying, or being killed, or no longer paying attention, or whatever, because no one really knows exactly what's happening. But that has been a thing. But we also have a group of characters that are demigods. They are all sired by one of the gods. So that is actually a campaign that we have where that is a thing. And in the last campaign, Matt tried so hard to successfully get a holy intervention to where, because there is a clerical ability to where it gives you the opportunity to talk directly to your deity and say, please hear my pleas. And then that's a thing that, you can open up the heavens and say, "Oh, don't grovel. All I ever hear is sorry this and forgive me that, and I'm not worthy." Bonus points if you know where that's from. But yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah, the campaign in question is Echoes of Aldersea. That was one of the more recent D&D 3.5 games we ran. We did Kith and Kin. Most recently, the Echoes of Aldersea was the one before, right? Yep. The 9th one we did.
That's right. Yep.
And that has a lot to do with gods and what's been happening to them.
Indeed. But as I say, on our show when we play, because every campaign always ties somehow to the next campaign, there is always something that happened in the previous campaign that is relevant to the next campaign, and every campaign story is somewhat interwoven. It is why the story arc for Echoes of Aldersea was the player interaction part of a story plotline that I planted 4 or 5 campaigns ago. That's how far that was going on. Like, I'd started then, and each campaign we revealed a bit more and a bit more and a bit more, and then now it's becoming more and more a prominently known thing. These 3 characters come together, there's something of destiny about them, and they learn through the adventure that they are, in fact, one of their parents is a deity. And one of them, that's not their case, but they are basically an astral diva, an angel, who has been sent down to be the protector for these 3 deities, because they all have a destiny. And if we think about gods, and the way that they would exist and work, all of the gods knew this time was going to come when these bad things were happening. They all pre-saw it. That doesn't mean they could change it, because sometimes destiny is destiny. But some of them built contingency plans, which were the demigods. So, and they still don't know who their god parent is. The Fairly Odd Parent. They haven't learned that yet, but they do know that they are somehow slightly gifted. If it was him with how often I tried intervention, I'd start questioning my faith. Well, and that's the thing, is when you think about what is God intervention, right, or holy intervention, all of a cleric's prayers or powers spells, if you want to call them spells. I prefer they're more like prayers, powers, whatever. They are channeled down from your god, right? Your faith is your connection between them, and they gift you these powers. And each day you pray for a number of prayers, and you're loaded with faith powers. Holy Intervention is a reason you can only even try it. Like, if it succeeds, you can't do it again for a week. It's basically that one-on-one chat with God or your deity. And then he has to physically or mentally or somehow directly intervene on your behalf. They're not going to do that a lot, because that's all they would do. If there's, let's just say there's 50,000, 500,000 clerics of Pelor running around, all of which are on a daily basis, oh, help me! Do something for me! Save me personally! That's all they would ever do! And how I tend to play that is, if you ask your god to directly involve Biogosh, you better have a good reason, first of all. The better your reason, the more powerful the intervention will be, and the less you are expected to pay for it. But I pretty much always deem that if you do get your god to directly do something on your behalf, there will be some kind of payment. It may just be that you go out and get a number of converts. It may be that you go on a pilgrimage. It may be that you say 3 Hail St. Cuthberts for the next 60 days or whatever, but you know. Gore, were you aware of Matt and Chris Tactics having a similar sort of deity parent in New Crits at the time of Echoes, and did it cause you to reconsider or pause on any story bits? No. I didn't pause on it, or didn't make me reconsider, because, again, the story arcs are so different. Having a character that is potentially a demigod isn't a unique thing. It's been done before, but what you do with it is the thing, right? It's no different than saying, oh, well, you know, somebody played a warlock that has a great old one, you know, and whatever, and then somebody else comes in and wants to do the same thing. The license is different. The great old one can be different. Like for Emlyn, we created Azamiathon. Azamiathon is an entity. He's an idea. He is a substance. If you want to truly know where he comes from, he was inspired by Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
No!
There's in Buffy, there's this one thing where they're fighting this big evil, right? It's just the substance of evil. It's not an individual, it's more of a thing, a force. And that's what Azamiathon is. Azamiathon is this long dead idea of a power that loiters between the prime material and the material plane, and the only way he can come back to the prime material plane is to reestablish enough faith and belief in him. So Emlyn finds a book that gives him insight into Azamiathon, and every so often he's like, yeah, here's a little bit more power for you, buddy. Here's some more stuff you can do. Look at Uncle Azzy. Look what I'm doing for you. Check me out. So Emlyn is running around and preaching the word, and almost like a cleric, as it were, but more of a cultist. And so are others. So eventually, in How We Roll Future, maybe Azamiathon will make it back to the prime material plane and become an entity. Maybe Azamiathon is why all the gods are dying. Maybe. Not saying it is.
Who knows?
Not saying it isn't.
And maybe there's a connection between the purple mist that causes corruption and Emlyn wanted to corrupt people?
Maybe.
Maybe. Who knows?
That's it. All right. Well, we're going to get out of here, but just as a reminder, if you missed the Monster Mayhem section, let me go ahead. Here is the sheet for the Epidermistress. It is an idea that was created by Sasaka many, many moons ago. And I had a 3.5 version of it that I made, but I have redone it for 5e. If any of you would like a copy of this monster to use in your campaigns or any way you wish, all you have to do is send me a little note via email to howweroll@gmail.com and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, give me Epidermistress, and or I can has Epidermistress, or anything you think that you want to put, and I will send it to you. The A in Arcona stands for Azamiathon, right? There you go.
I don't think Emlyn mentioned Azamiathon once during the first campaign he was in. But then again, there was a lot of crazy stuff happening, right? That's
right.
Campaign.
Also, as a reminder, if you want your monster to be featured during Monster Mayhem, all you have to do is send me an idea, a concept, stat it if you want. But if you don't want, you don't have to. Just, and thank you for that additional cheer. Much appreciated. You'd be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Switch Runner. We really don't need to, but we do appreciate it.
Always appreciate it. Never required. But yeah, if you would like us to basically turn one of your creations into a nice little stat block sheet that you can utilize in your games, send me the idea, and I will do that for you. Can I email the monster to you, Gore? Yeah, that's the whole point. Email it howweroll@gmail.com. Be sure to make sure that if your email address is not deadkid55, make sure you let me know that that is who is sending it. Otherwise, I can't give you credit because I don't know who you are. There we go. But yeah. But hopefully, over a period of time, we'll build up a little stable of these created monsters. When I do a homebrew monster, I'll do a sheet for those probably as well, going forward, and make those available to you guys as well. And just little bits of free content we can throw in your direction for you.
Yeah, we are going to be starting Strahd hopefully by the 11th of April next month.
The 11th is
that's what we're shooting for. But if obviously we're not ready, we'll delay it a week. I assume the Thursday show will kind of be on the similar track, right? I mean,
yeah, we just finished one of those.
If we need more time, we just finished the Thursday show, and we will. What are we going back to? Did we decide? I mean, I think we have a pretty good idea.
I think we decided we're going to go into the second part of the Warhammer Fantasy roleplay campaign.
Yeah, we'll be returning to Aldetz, Bertilda, Catarel, and Matthew Bane. Yes.
Matthew Bane. Yep. So there we go.
Who has gone through some stuff and gotten his 10 experience points so he could buy some things. Yay!
Would a exclamation email command be useful? You know what, Junk? You're full of good ideas. It would.
Nope. No, it is. Good idea. Good idea, Junk.
I can make that a thing very quickly. Commands. Add.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll have the new shows kicking off in a couple weeks. If not, the week after. Obviously, there's things that need to happen behind the scenes still, outros, video that Jay needs to do, and and Gordon needs a little break. He deserves it. I will be doing YouTube renovation stuff as well. I have stuff. I have pretty much every non-weekend, non-Monday, Thursday, except for tonight being an exception because we were doing something we didn't know we were going to be doing this. I premiere spliced together episodes. I have 5 more episodes of Marks of Entry to splice together and upload. Beyond that, then I have to just title them, give them names, but they're being.
All right, try that, Junk.
Can be done.
Go ahead and see if that works for you.
We're not going to do a ball gag emotes. No, Junk. No. Freaking questions.
There you go. Thank you, Rerollbot.
beta, that is even more unscheduled and unplanned. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, when do you want me to do a beta?
Alrighty. Well, thanks for joining us for the relaunch of Dialogues and Dice D&D talk show. As I said, the format is a little different. Inevitably, some things our reroll will get discussed just because it's what we all do and it's what we know. But the idea is the majority of our content will be very D&D and RPG centric, so more poignant about the game itself in general, as opposed to our particular campaigns. So there we go. All right, guys. Well, thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you for our kind cheer, and we will see you again soon. Whether there's something happens Monday or not, I don't know. Whether there's something that happens next Thursday or not, I don't know. But we will keep you informed on the Twitters. So keep up with everybody's social media to know about things that are happening right there. And if nothing else, make sure you follow us at How We Roll on Twitters, because that's where you're going to get the most information from. So there you go. Blue, what's up?
Also, email us if you have any ideas for topics you would want to be seen discussed on Dialogues and Dice.
Or Discord, right.
Or Discord, sure.
Like, for example, one of the, we want to talk about some of the misconceptions, like what we talked about with railroading. That's going to be an episode. There's a morality one that we're going to talk about in regards to
alignments,
inherent evil species, and the difference between species and races and stuff like that. And whether that's a good thing, bad thing. How do you view this? Kind of exploring the whole, if a race is inherently evil and you find a bunch of little kids of that race, what do you do? Things like that. So just some interesting topics.
Fun, lighthearted topics.
That's right. The hard-hitting questions that nobody else wants to answer. Hey, and it's me and Shagget, so there may be some times where we do touch a little controversial. We'll try not to, but it may happen.
Oh, we
just gonna say. All right, guys. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. We've had a blast. Hope you did too. We will see you soon. Y'all take care. Bye.
Bye.